Simon & Schuster Audio presents Catching Air by Sarah Pekkanen. Read by Candace Thaxton.
Part 1. Chapter 1. Don Zukoski was scared of lots of things. Spiders, lightning bolts, the way New York cabbies drove. But only once in her life had she known true terror. She was 8 years old back then, and visiting her elderly neighbor. Mrs. Rita's home was cluttered with gold-framed photos of her long-grown children and towers of Reader's Digest magazines, and it smelled of dog pee from her 2 yippy terriers. But Dawn loved going there because the cookie jar was stocked with Nilla wafers and the television was always tuned to game shows. Lacy curtains over the windows hid the sight of other kids on the street playing kickball or hide-and-seek on summer mornings, but Dawn could hear their shouts and cheers. She didn't care, though. She and Mrs. Rita were busy competing in their own games of Plinko or One Away. "You're overbidding by 1,000, Mrs. Rita would admonish the contestants. "Dawn, we would have walked right off with that camper." Dawn would nod and reach for another cookie, savoring the sweet crumbles on her tongue and the feeling of safety she never experienced at school, where her classmates put 2 straws in their mouths to imitate her buck teeth or held their noses and giggled when she walked by, no matter how hard she willed herself to become invisible. It happened when a young guy spun the big wheel at the end of the first half of The Price is Right. Dawn was sitting cross-legged on the maroon wall-to-wall carpeting that itched her bare legs. A plate of cookies rested on her lap, and the dogs, who enjoyed Nilla wafers as much as she did, were watching her from a few feet away. Staring, really. Dawn stared back. It was funny at first. The dogs, who were usually hyper, had become as still as statues. Dawn locked eyes with one of them. It was just like the no-blinking contests the boys in her class loved to hold. How long could she last? 5 seconds? 10? Then Mrs. Rita let out a whoop and clapped her hands sharply.
"Sample complete. Ready to continue?"